The moment you stop explaining yourself to people who do not care to understand you, a terrifying realization occurs. You suddenly see how much of your precious life force has been traded away for the cheap currency of validation. Most people spend their entire lives trapped in an invisible trial, acting as their own defense attorney before a jury that has already found them guilty. We over-explain our choices, our dreams, and our boundaries because we are desperately trying to control the uncontrollable, the perceptions of others. We falsely believe that if we just find the perfect combination of words, we can force someone else to see our worth, respect our boundaries, or agree with our vision. But this is a psychological trap, a self-inflicted wound born from a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature and power. Stoicism teaches us that true power does not lie in winning the argument, but in recognizing that the argument itself is an unnecessary draining of your inner castle. When you break this cycle, you reclaim an immense reservoir of mental energy that you had previously been giving away for free to people who do not even value it. The impulse to over-explain is almost never driven by a genuine desire for clarity. Instead, it is fueled by a subtle, hidden form of anxiety. It is the anxious need to manage how you are perceived by the world, a direct symptom of what Epictetus warned against when he observed that men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of things. When you feel the desperate urge to justify your lifestyle, your career shift, or your personal standards to someone else, you are essentially admitting that their opinion holds dominion over your peace of mind. You are placing your emotional well-being into the hands of an external judge. This constant state of defense creates a persistent undercurrent of stress, an exhausting mental chatter that convinces you that you are never entirely safe unless everyone around you approves of your actions. It is a slow, agonizing erosion of your self-sovereignty. You become a slave to the expectations of others, constantly adapting your narrative to fit their comfort levels. There is an incredible, sudden shift in your personal sovereignty the exact moment you choose silence over justification. When a person questions your path or misunderstands your intent, and you respond with nothing more than a calm, assured nod, the entire dynamic of the interaction reverses. By refusing to enter the arena of debate, you silently declare that your worth is not subject to their approval. This is not a weaponized silence meant to punish or manipulation, but rather a profound, immovable boundary rooted in absolute self-assurance. You are essentially realizing that their misunderstanding of you is their burden to bear, not yours. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to look inward, stating that the happiness of those who admire you will vanish, but the tranquility of a well-ordered mind remains permanent. When you embrace this stoic silence, you instantly cut the invisible strings that allowed others to pull at your emotions. You step off the stage of their expectations and step into the quiet, unshakable sanctuary of your own truth. This mastery hinges entirely on understanding the core pillar of Stoic philosophy, the dichotomy of control. Epictetus framed the universe into two distinct categories: things that are completely up to us, and things that are not up to us at all. Your opinions, your impulses, your desires, and your aversions belong to you. The opinions of others, their reactions, their biases, and their mental filters belong entirely to them. Trying to force someone to understand your perspective is a direct violation of this universal law, a foolish attempt to control an external variable that is fundamentally out of your reach. When you over-explain, you are desperately fighting against reality itself, trying to rearrange the furniture inside someone else's mind. It is a battle you are guaranteed to lose, because their perception is shaped by a lifetime of their own insecurities, conditioning, and limitations. True maturity begins when you stop taking responsibility for the mental state of other people. Consider the profound economy of energy that occurs when you actively decide to withdraw your defenses from the world. Most social interactions are battlegrounds of subtle dominance, where people use projection and criticism to pull others down to their level of comfort. When you offer an explanation in response to criticism, you are giving away ammunition. You are providing the other person with the exact data points they need to dissect your choices and validate their own biases. Silence, however, offers them absolutely nothing to hold on to. It acts as a mirror, forcing them to confront their own discomfort and the vacancy of their hostility. This realization transforms your daily life from a series of exhausting skirmishes into a steady, focused march toward your own ideals. You begin to understand that you owe the world your character, not your reasons. The absolute freedom that comes from letting people be wrong about you is one of the most liberating experiences a human being can achieve. We have been conditioned by a hyper-connected society to believe that every misunderstanding requires a correction, that every critique demands a counter-argument. We rush to comment sections, family dinners, and workplace meetings armed with justifications, completely blind to the fact that our defensiveness is the very thing keeping us chained. The ancient Stoics understood that your reputation is merely a shadow cast by your character, and you cannot control the shape of a shadow when the light source belongs to someone else. If someone wishes to view you as cold, arrogant, or misguided because you refuse to perform for their validation, let them. Their misconception changes absolutely nothing about the reality of who you are. Your truth does not require their acknowledgement to exist. As you sit with this realization, you begin to see that the need to explain yourself is actually a form of self-betrayal. Every time you try to convince an unappreciative person of your value, you are quietly telling yourself that your own internal validation is insufficient. You are whispering to your soul that you need the world's permission to be who you are. Break that chain today. Reclaim the quiet authority of a life lived without the need for an audience's applause. Let your actions speak with the weight of concrete reality, and let your words remain sparse, deliberate, and entirely your own. The architecture of your peace depends entirely on which thoughts you allow to enter your inner citadel, and which external noises you choose to leave outside the gates. True power is not loud, it is perfectly still. Reflect deeply on the spaces in your life where you are still begging for validation through your explanations. For the true test of your sovereignty is about to begin. When Marcus Aurelius looked out at the vast Roman Empire, he did not see a loyal collective of subjects. He saw a volatile ocean of conflicting egos, hidden agendas, and inevitable betrayals. He understood that the grander your position in life, the more you become a target for the psychological projections of those who cannot master themselves. The emperor kept a private journal, never intended for publication, specifically to remind himself how to navigate the sting of betrayal without ever lifting a shield in self-defense. He wrote that the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. When those closest to him turned away or actively sought his downfall, Marcus did not launch a campaign of public justification or petty retaliation. He understood that the moment you react defensively to an injury, you allow the perpetrator to dictate the terms of your existence. You become a puppet dancing to the rhythm of their malice. By refusing to defend his honor verbally, he practiced a profound form of strategic scarcity, recognizing that his presence, his silence, and his untroubled focus were the most potent responses available to a sovereign mind. This approach is completely counterintuitive to the modern psyche, which demands immediate closure, public vindication, and the absolute destruction of our detractors. We believe that if we do not fight back loudly, we have lost. But the Stoic perspective reveals that the person who betrays you has already destroyed their own character, which is the only true harm that can befall a human being. Your character remains completely untouched unless you choose to corrupt it with anger or defensiveness. When you meet betrayal with an unshakable, silent indifference, you expose the absolute futility of the attack. You leave the betrayer holding the venom they intended for you, forcing them to swallow it themselves. Modern psychology calls this phenomenon projection, a defense mechanism where individuals attribute their own unacceptable thoughts, motives, or flaws onto someone else. When someone attacks your character, misrepresents your actions, or betrays your trust, they are rarely reacting to the reality of who you are. Instead, they are operating out of a deep, subconscious discomfort with themselves. They see in your discipline, your boundaries, or your success a stark reminder of their own lack of sovereignty. Because it is too painful for them to confront their own inadequacy, their mind distorts reality to make you the villain. If you step into the arena to defend yourself against their projection, you are validating a delusion. You are accepting a heavy burden that was never yours to carry. The moment you see an attack through this psychological lens, anger evaporates, replaced by a cold, detached clarity. You realize that their hostility is not a reflection of your worth, but a confession of their own internal chaos. This brings us to the profound law of strategic scarcity, the deliberate rationing of your attention, your explanations, and your emotional investment. In a world that is deafeningly loud, where everyone is constantly shouting to be heard and seen, silence becomes an apex predator. When you stop offering your energy to every passing critic or deceptive associate, you create a vacuum that shifts the entire balance of power. People are deeply unsettled by what they cannot read. When your enemies strike at you and encounter nothing but an immovable, quiet void, their anxiety spikes. They begin to second-guess their own strategies, burning through their own mental energy while you remain completely anchored in your purpose. Scarcity breeds value. By making your reactions incredibly scarce, you teach the world that your peace of mind is an expensive luxury that no one can afford to buy with cheap provocations. We must understand that our obsession with fairness is often our greatest vulnerability. We want the world to be just, we want people to see the truth, and we want our betrayers to realize the pain they have caused. But demanding fairness from an undisciplined world is like demanding that a storm stop raining simply because you forgot your umbrella. The Stoic does not waste time wishing for a different reality. He accepts the world exactly as it is, populated by the treacherous, the envious, and the ignorant. By dropping the expectation that people will treat you fairly, you eliminate the capacity to be shocked by their malice. You become psychologically bulletproof. You no longer view betrayal as a personal tragedy, but as an inevitable natural occurrence, no different than winter following autumn. This shift in perspective does not make you cynical. It makes you invulnerable. True control is never about dominating the actions of others. It is about achieving absolute dominion over your own internal state. Every single day, you are presented with dozens of opportunities to hand over the keys to your inner citadel. A disrespectful comment from a colleague, an act of dishonesty from a friend, or a fabricated rumor in your social circle are all invitations to lose your sovereignty. If you take the bait, if you allow your heart rate to spike and your mind to race with counter-arguments, you have surrendered. You have let an external event conquer your mind. The ancient masters measured a man's strength not by the weight he could lift or the armies he could command, but by the gap between a negative stimulus and his internal response. In that precise gap lies the entirety of human freedom. As you move forward, look closely at the betrayals and projections you are currently harboring in your mind. Notice how much space they occupy, how they quietly steal your focus from the creative and constructive work you are meant to do. Realize that keeping an old injury alive through mental arguments is a form of self-sabotage. You are voluntarily prolonging the betrayal long after the initial act has ended. The ultimate act of power is not forgiveness in the traditional sense, but a radical, indifferent dismissal. You simply erase the offender from the equation of your life, closing the door firmly without anger, without malice, and without a single word of explanation. You return your focus entirely to your own path, leaving them behind in the dust of their own creation. As the circle of your life tightens and the noise of the world intensifies, the true test of your resilience shifts from external threats to the pressure within your closest relationships. The most brutal test of your personal sovereignty rarely comes from your enemies. It comes from the people who sit at your dinner table. When you begin to reclaim your silence, establish unyielding boundaries, and step away from the need for validation, the loudest pushback will often come from close family and lifelong friends. This is the classic crabs-in-a-bucket dynamic, a painful psychological phenomenon, where members of a group actively attempt to pull down any individual who threatens to rise above the collective mediocrity. Your transformation acts as an unwelcome mirror to their own stagnation. By changing the rules of engagement and refusing to participate in the usual cycles of gossip, mutual reassurance, or trauma bonding, you inadvertently expose their lack of growth. They do not necessarily want you to fail. They simply want you to stay predictable so that their own choices remain comfortable. When you encounter this resistance from those you love, the temptation to explain yourself becomes almost overwhelming. You want them to understand that your new boundaries are not an attack on them, but a defense of your own mental clarity. You want to show them the philosophy, to map out your long-term vision, and to convince them that you are moving toward a better version of yourself. Epictetus explicitly warned against this exact behavior, advising that on no occasion should you call yourself a philosopher, nor talk a great deal among the unlearned about theorems, but rather do what follows from them. If you feel the need to preach your lifestyle to your family, you are still seeking their permission to live it. True Stoic autonomy requires you to endure their misunderstanding without offering a single word of defense. You must let them believe you are changing for the worse, if that is what their comfort dictates, while you quietly execute your growth in absolute privacy. Handling public ridicule and familial pushback requires an advanced level of radical self-discipline that completely dismantles the ego. When a relative throws a passive-aggressive jab at your new habits, or an old friend makes light of your focused lifestyle, the untrained mind instantly prepares for war. Your chest tightens, your blood pressure rises, and your intellect begins crafting a devastating comeback to put them in their place. But the moment you strike back, you have lost the match. You have allowed their cheap, uncultivated opinion to throw you off your axis. The Stoic looks at the person mocking them and remembers that their critique is born from a deep internal poverty. Why should you care about the financial advice of a bankrupt man or the emotional critique of an undisciplined mind? You simply observe the ridicule as an external event, a passing cloud that has absolutely no power to alter the atmosphere of your internal sanctuary. This requires you to separate your affection for your family from your dependency on their approval. You can love someone deeply while simultaneously assigning zero weight to their evaluation of your life choices. This boundary is incredibly difficult to maintain because we are biologically wired to seek the safety of the tribe. To the primitive brain, ostracization from the family group feels like an existential threat. But the modern world is different, and the tribal mind will often anchor you to a life of quiet desperation if you let it. Radical self-discipline means acknowledging the primal urge to fit in and then deliberately choosing the discomfort of isolation over the comfort of conformity. You must become comfortable with the awkward silences at family gatherings, the whispered comments behind your back, and the gradual drifting away of friends who no longer recognize the person you are becoming. We must also recognize that people will often attempt to weaponize your past against your present. Because your family has known you since childhood, they possess a vivid catalog of your old mistakes, your past insecurities, and your previous failures. When you attempt to step into a position of high discipline and quiet power, they will frequently remind you of who you used to be, attempting to anchor you to your old identity. The Stoic response to this tactic is total detachment. The person you were yesterday is dead. The only reality that exists is the present moment and the character you choose to manifest right now. When someone throws your past in your face, you do not need to deny it, defend it, or apologize for it. You can simply look at them with absolute calmness, acknowledging that the person they are describing indeed existed, but that you have moved on to other things. This level of maturity transforms your relationships from emotional traps into high-level testing grounds for your philosophy. Every critical remark becomes a weight to lift, strengthening your psychological armor. Every attempt to manipulate you through guilt becomes an opportunity to practice absolute emotional stillness. You stop viewing your difficult family dynamics as a misfortune and begin viewing them as a customized training ground designed to forge an unbreakable spirit. If you can maintain your composure, your silence, and your boundaries under the intense pressure of familial scrutiny, then no stranger in the world will ever be able to touch your peace of mind. You are building an internal fortress that is entirely self-sustaining, independent of the warmth or coldness of the domestic environment. As you master this domestic battlefield, you will notice a strange phenomenon occur. The initial resistance will slowly transform into a quiet, unspoken respect. When people realize that their barbs do not penetrate your armor, that their guilt trips do not alter your course, and that their ridicule is met with nothing but a calm, steady gaze, they stop trying. They accept the new reality of who you are, because you have demonstrated through consistent, silent action that your boundaries are non-negotiable. You have broken their control by refusing to participate in the game. But as you secure the perimeter of your personal life, a new and more insidious challenge emerges. The ambitions you harbor, the massive goals you are quietly working toward, and the strategic vision you have for your future will create a powerful internal pressure that demands to be contained, leading you directly into the ultimate phase of your psychological immunity. The real danger to your ambition does not come from the obstacles in front of you. It comes from the premature release of the pressure building inside your own mind. When you conceive a massive goal, a career pivot, or a radical life change, an immense psychological energy accumulates within your consciousness. The untrained mind immediately seeks relief from this pressure by talking about it. We tell our partners, our friends, or our social media followers about our grand plans, because the mere act of announcing the goal triggers a cheap, unearned release of dopamine. Your brain mistakes the declaration for the achievement, giving you the emotional reward of success without a single ounce of the labor required to earn it. This premature celebration actively drains the very fuel you need to execute the task. The Stoic treats his ambitions like a highly pressurized steam engine, sealing every valve, closing every vent, and forcing that raw internal energy down into the dark, quiet chambers of pure execution. This internal containment creates a powerful pressure cooker effect that alters the very structure of your discipline. When you resolve to tell absolutely no one what you are building, the energy has nowhere to go but into your work. Your early mornings, your late nights, and your intense study sessions become the sole outlets for your ambition. You build in total anonymity. Marcus Aurelius commanded himself to be like a cliff against which the waves continually break, standing firm while the foaming water dies away around it. Keeping your ambitions completely private provides a profound immunity to workplace and social sabotage. In any environment where human egos compete, the moment you announce a high-level objective, you inadvertently trigger the insecurity and competitiveness of those around you. They will subtly undermine your efforts, offer backhanded advice masked as caution, or actively work to block your path. By remaining completely silent about your trajectory, you walk through the professional and social landscape entirely invisible to their radar, allowing your ultimate success to catch them completely off guard. This absolute containment leads directly to the final philosophical climax of your transformation, the total realization of your inner citadel. You finally understand that the ultimate goal of human existence is not to collect titles, wealth, or the applause of a fickle public, but to achieve an unshakable, self-contained state of absolute tranquility. You no longer need to explain yourself because your character is your only metric of success. You no longer fear betrayal because you recognize that the actions of others belong entirely to them. You no longer seek validation because you have become the sole judge and jury of your own life. You have stepped out of the chaotic, exhausting matrix of human expectations and anchored your soul in the bedrock of reality. You are no longer a puppet pulled by the strings of critique or praise. You are the absolute sovereign of your mind, moving through the world with the quiet, devastating power of a force of nature that answers to nothing but its own truth. If this deep exploration of Stoic sovereignty has brought value to your path, consider exploring the deeper dimensions of mental fortitude in our next discussion. Until we meet again in another video.